Okay, good morning. We're going to try this again. This is Jim Hodgson and Garry Goff here at the Fort Worth Aviation Museum for another edition of Fun with Aviation. And we're going to reprise one from a few weeks ago where we did the T-33 and the A-4, but the sound was bad. So here's our subject airplanes for today. The T-33 and the A-4. We're going to walk around. Gary's got some pictures and some things to talk about. And we're going to talk about some of the difference in terms of aerodynamics and weapons and all of that kind of stuff. But the T-33 really came from the P-80, which was designed in 1948. It was the first post-World War II jet for the United States, straight-wing airplane. And Gary, what's the differences between the single seat and the two-seater?
Well, the single seat, as you can see, or the two-seater is for a trainer. The single seat would have been the fighter version, and you can actually see where the machine guns used to be right here, where the panels were closed on the fighter version. And then in the trainer version, they obviously didn't need it, and so they came in and made two seats of it so that you could have an instructor in the back seat and the student pilot in the front seat.
Well, a number of interesting things about this airplane. We're going to get a close. Okay.
This is what happens when you let fighter pilots deal with technology.
Yeah, we were just told that our connection paused on the network, so we're going to keep an eye on that. Seems to always be some technology issues here. This is a straight-wing airplane. Essentially, it was designed like the P-51s and the P-47s, and hadn't gotten into swept-wing airplanes yet. So this is a straight-wing airplane, but we've talked about a lot of these others, and there are no leading-edge devices on this airplane. And we're going to see something different. Hey, cuz, we're going to see something different later on when we're going to see some moving slats on the front of the airplane. Integral drop tanks extended the range quite a bit. And so this is one of the very first jets. In fact, the P-80, the Shooting Star, the single seat, was the first American jet to have a jet-on-jet encounter with a MiG-15, I believe it was, over Korea. So this was the first airplane to do that. Now, the service of these airplanes extended quite a bit because it was not just during Korea, but during Vietnam, the airplane was used as a transition airplane for new FACs. Garry can tell us a little bit about that program.
The interesting thing is that this aircraft was around even when I was in pilot training back in the 1980s. As a matter of fact, one of my classmates got the T-33 and was based out of Langley to be a target. In other words, to fly interceptor missions against the air defense forces with all sorts of different radar jamming equipment on board. But as the picture shows here, I don't know if you'll be able to see the actual picture.
Yep.
That is my dad in the 50s, late 50s, that did exactly what this airplane was designed for initially, was a primary jet trainer. And so it is incredible when you think about the number of years from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s that this aircraft flew and was a tactical viable aircraft.
Well, one of the other reasons we have it here is we have a collection policy here on the aircraft. We don't just take anything that comes along. We first of all look for airplanes that have some history or connection with Fort Worth. Try to get away from the street a little bit more. Sorry about that. They have some connection with Fort Worth, or they were a forward air control airplane or an airplane that was controlled by forward air controllers. So with this one, you've got a little bit of everything. It was used as a trainer for FACs who were going to learn how to control airplanes. It was used as a station airplane here in Fort Worth for a while, and it was also controlled by forward air controllers. So those are the three categories. Now this one's called a Spittin' Kitten, and I'll tell you the story on that if you don't remember it from last time. This airplane spent most of its career in Elmendorf in Alaska, but also spent some time in Minot, up in North Dakota. And when they were up there, one of the senior people at the squadron found a couple of wildcats. His mother had been hit on the road, and the two wildcats were there. So he scooped them up and took them in, and they kept them in a cage in the squadron area, and they were always fighting. They were always fighting and spitting, and from then on, the squadron became known as the Spittin' Kittens. And that was one of the requirements that we had when we brought this airplane in is that we put it in these colors. Now, whoops. Before we go on and take a look at the A4 a little bit, I want to look at the tail again because we've got technology at work here. Now, if any of you with us for the SNV or the hi George, with the SNV last week or the BT-13? Give me a thumbs up if you saw that one. Okay, one of the things we talked about with that airplane was the fact that it did not have a flying tail and that we had trim tabs and elevators. And so here's an airplane that is really not even 20 years removed from the BT-13. This airplane was designed about 15 years or so after the BT-13. So the flight controls are very similar. On the tail, it does not have a trim tab like the BT did, but it still just has the rudder and the tail.
And if the airplane was bent just a little bit and you flew it enough times, you would actually come back and bend this to actually relieve some of the rudder pressure on the aircraft. So things were very basic in the 50s and 60s when they flew this airplane.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look. Now this airplane was subsonic, did not exceed the speed of sound, mainly because it's a straight wing airplane, single engine, straight wing. So now we're going to take a look at the A4, which is actually just a little bit newer in terms of time. The A4 came into existence in the early 50s, but there were a lot of changes in technology. Now this replaced the A4D Skyraider of the Navy and the Marine Corps, but we're going to see a lot of different technology differences. Let's take a look at the tail. I think the first thing you're going to notice is it's got a flying tail. So that means the tail could be moved up and down. Let's see, Chris Black, my dad's favorite airplane. He flew F4s, but said the most fun he had flying was a T-33 flight instructor in Laredo. Okay, right. There you go.
Yeah, my dad did it in Big Spring. That's a singular, not Big Springs. Big Spring, Texas, which is Webb Air Force Base.
So the tail on this airplane could be set at different different degrees, up or down, depending on what phase of flight you're in. We would set it at a particular nose-up attitude for coming off of the carrier, for instance, but then you still had the rudder and the tail, but it was movable. Now this is single engine, and we've got essentially the same things on the back of the wing here that we had on the T-33. Ailerons, the big white thing here, but you'll notice there are no trim tabs because you're actually trimming the aileron itself. And then the flaps, and those are going to give you slow speed characteristics. And right here, I want you to see where it says Navy and VSF. VSF 1 USS Shangri-La. The VSF was a special squadron. It was considered to be a Navy fixed wing anti-submarine or sub-fighter airplane. It was only the squadron only existed for a short period of time, but the whole idea was it was going to go out with rockets and go after subs on the surface. But this big panel that you see here, rectangular shaped panel, is the speed brakes on the A4.
And we remember from our discussion on the F-102 why they have all of these little pieces of metal sticking up. The word was vortex generators. Vortex generators. And you'll keep the lift on the wing, keep the air flowing over the wingtip so it keeps flying.
And you'll notice there's a lot of them here. Now this is a delta wing airplane. This was one of the first of the delta wing airplanes that was used by the Navy. And when these things stall, they stall from the wing root out. So they had to keep the wings flying. Had to keep the wings flying because it's creating that airflow across the aileron. So you've got aileron control. And here's, we talked about these before, but this one's down so we can talk about it more. This is the leading edge slat. And Gary, if you want to move that for us.
This is an interesting thing about the leading edge slat. In that,
we've got it. I'm sorry, we've got it so somebody can't hurt themselves.
So they can't hurt themselves. Is that this one does not have a motor to generate the leading edge slat to come down to save weight on the aircraft. It comes down aerodynamically.
And the Navy also had a version that they used for Top Gun. If you saw the movie, Top Gun, the A4s that you were seeing there were a modified A4 that's called a mongoose. And with the mongoose, they put a bigger engine in it, and they put the slats were bolted up. So Gary, you fought against A4s.
When I was flying F-15s out of Okinawa, Japan, we would every 3 to 5 months have to deploy to the Philippines to practice in Coke Thunder, which is like red flag here in the United States. To work up, we would fly against the Marine Corps A4 mongooses out of QB Point and Subic Bay, and these were all Top Gun instructors that we had to fight against, and they were called VC5, the checkerboards. And what was interesting is that we did not know if 1 was going to show or if 9 were going to show. We had absolutely no idea, so it was probably one of the best combat training we'd ever had. And I will tell you right now, if you turn with an A4 Top Gun instructor, you're going to be fighting the whole way to try and stay alive. These guys were very good. We had to explode in the vertical and use the up-down as opposed to the horizontal circle to beat these A4 guys.
Well, one of the other things the A4 was noted for is its roll rate.
Oh my gosh!
These airplanes, the roll rate on these airplanes is 720 degrees per second. So snap your fingers, and that means that airplane has done 2 complete rolls. I'm going to take a little bit of look underneath here, show you a few things. You see a big red hook here. That hook is part of the holdback fitting for the bridle on the carrier for the catapult. A bridle, an actual wire bridle would go from here down to the shuttle on the deck of the airplane, and the airplane was actually dragged off the deck and thrown into the air. Now we're going to talk about the bombs here a little bit, and I have to tell y'all we've got 6 Mark 82s here, which are 500-pound bombs. They're the actual 500-pound bombs, but there are no explosives in them. These things weigh close to 500 pounds. And so when we brought these out here to load them on, we had to bring the Marines from over here at the JRB came out here with what they call hernia bars, which are screwed into the nose of the bomb and into the tail of the bomb, and they physically lift them up and put them in. And it was interesting, an interesting thing for them as well as us, because none of the Marines here now do it this way. They use a stats or a small forklift to do it. We've got some videos on our YouTube channel of this evolution that took place here. But Gary, why don't you talk to him about these fins back here?
Okay, these fins, as you can see, this is where they'll rotate here and here. The reason why they put these fins on, we call them high drag bombs, is that as we had to fight against surface-to-air missiles that required us to fly lower and lower to the ground. Well, the problem is if you're flying at 200 feet above or 100 feet above the ground or even 50 feet above the ground, and you drop a slick bomb like this, when it explodes, you're going to get hit with some of the shrapnel. They had to figure out a way to separate the bomb from the aircraft that's scooting away. And so they came up with this idea of the high drag. And so imagine as soon as you release the bomb, poof, these things come out just like that. And it literally stops the bomb in mid-flight. So if you're doing 500 or 480, whatever it is, you're going to be long gone before this bomb slowly starts to drop onto the ground at a 100-foot delivery. And it allows for safe separation, is the key word, safe separation for the jet from the ordnance.
Okay. We're going to go over and show you a little bit better off of the A7. We got one thing here we want to show you.
The rat.
The rat. Okay, this is the rat. And the rat stands for ram air turbine. So many airplanes have this, including airliners. But this is one of the first of the airplanes that had one. So the idea is that if you lose the engine or you lose the generator, you can deploy the rat. You pull the handle and it popped out. And then see if you can spin that, Gary. So there you go. And the airflow around this would spin that up, and all it is a generator. So it would give you some basic electrical power for a period of time. so that you could run the radios, talk to some people, and do some very basic things with electricity on their way down to the ground. Now the landing gear, even though it's hydraulic, you could manually unlock it and the gear will fall by gravity, so it's you can get the airplane down to the ground.
What I like about the Rat, that it just shows what is involved to just for me as a pilot to get in and fly the airplane. How much engineering, how much inventive ingenuity that the engineers and everybody, the mechanics, because you can see the mechanic bracket here and the screws and the spring, and just to make this thing a generator that keeps the aircraft flying so that we can safely recover the aircraft. And my hat's off to the guys that can think of this stuff and then can build it and engineer it and put it on the aircraft and make it work.
So we're going to step around. Oh, one thing we're going to show you here is the pitot tube. Come on.
Come on. There it is.
There we go. Okay. It tried to flip on us again here.
Yep.
This is the fuel probe. And so single seat airplane, with the Navy and the Marine Corps, we use what's referred to as a basket, which looks like a basket coming off of the back end of the fueler. Air Force uses a different method, which is a probe that they stick into the airplane. But it's out here in front so you can actually see where the probe is and put it into the basket, which is sometimes a game of skill. Referred to as fencing with the basket at times. And there were more than one people who came home with a basket hanging on their probe and no refueling airplane in front of them. So
yeah, the Air Force is a lot easier because the boomer has to stick you with the probe, as opposed to you have to take this airplane and go in to find a basket. Oh my gosh, at 300 miles an hour or something like that, it's not fun.
So we're going to go over here to the A7 so we can take a look at the fusing on the bomb, so you've got an idea what the fuses are all about.
These fuses are amazingly simple. If anybody's seen a grenade where you pull the pin from the grenade and then you throw the grenade and then it explodes later on, well, that's the whole idea, is that you want this bomb to not be armed until it's further away from the aircraft. And so it's just like, here's the ring here, here's the wire here, and once this bomb releases, then it'll pull the wire that's keeping the propeller or the impeller from spinning. Once this thing is pulled and the impeller starts spinning really, really fast, it arms the bomb itself to be able to explode. Another safety feature so that the pilot doesn't get exploded with the bomb. And the interesting thing is you can see the fuse is a little bit out. Some fuses are very, very long. We call daisy cutters. They're designed to explode above the ground to be able to take out anything that's out there for a landing site, for helicopters to come in, take out any bad guys or any
booby traps.
Booby traps, thank you. Or you could take this exact fuse and put it on the back of the bomb so that the bomb would penetrate the ground and then explode, so that you could explode a bunker. Just a very simple yet elegant device to keep me as the flyer safe when I expend this ordnance.
Well, and with the A7s too, they used to have electronic fusing on them so that they could actually change in flight whether the bomb would go off on impact or whether it would be delayed fusing or whether it would go off before impact. So we wanted to show you here because it's a little easier to see. But one of the other things I want to mention here is this big white thing that the bombs are attached to. Okay, that whole device is called a TER, which is a triple ejector rack. So what you can see here, this one is a MER. The first device up here where you've got 3 bombs on it is actually called a TER, a triple ejector rack. And interestingly enough, the person who invented the OV-10 is also the inventor of the TER, KP Rice. Yeah, wow. He invented the TER, and then later on, they went and took it from just a triple ejector rack, like you see on a lot of airplanes, like the OV-10, and they put it to where they put 2 of them on a rail like this and made it a MER, or a multi-ejector rack. Now the A7 could carry a lot of bombs. I mean, we've got 12 on this airplane, and that's a lot just for the ground here. but you could actually have 3 stacks of these on this side and 3 stacks on the other side. The A4, by the way, we were looking at this earlier. The A4 was the first airplane that was designed to be able to carry a nuclear device externally. And that's one of the reasons that it sits up so high, so that you could have these big external loads on the airplane and be able to carry those and take off on the ground or off of the carrier. Let's see, the empty weight of the A4 is just about 10,000 pounds. And what we were just looking at is the max gross takeoff weight of this airplane is 24,000 pounds. So it can almost 2.5 times its own weight in bombs and ordnance.
And what's really interesting is the A4 could carry the same bomb load as the B-17 bomber in World War II.
And another little trivia piece is that the airplane, the A4s in general, dropped more ordnance during the Vietnam War than any other airplane. That includes the B-52s. So one little homage here very quickly. It says PC, that's Plane Captain Nick Rico. Nick was one of our fond supporters who helped us out a lot here. We lost Nick and his wife last year, and we miss them. And Nick asked us to, along with Jake Jacobson here, to do this airplane up as the VSF-1 airplane in memory of and in honor of Lieutenant John Rogers. So one more thing we're going to show you again, and this is going to be the, we've talked about this before, but the formation line when you're flying formation on the other airplane. So again, you would put the pilot's head over something when you're on the wing position, and with the A4, we like to put the pilot's head right over, and this is for what we call parade position, which is close. We'd like to put the pilot's head right over the wingtip light, pretty much just like that, and keep him right there, and that keeps us in place the whole time. Now we could also go into a combat spread or a loose spread, and we would still stay on. Combat spread was different. That was a couple miles apart. But if we were playing a loose formation, we might be as far out as this from the other airplane, but we'd still stay on the same lines. So, from the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, again, Gary and I'd like to thank you for joining us. There's the A4 and there's the T-33.
Come visit us so you can come touch these airplanes we've been showing you.
Yep, we'd love to have you out here. Keep an eye on everything. Y'all be safe out there. And so once again from the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, this is Jim Hodgson and Gary Goff. Y'all have a good week. Thank you.